Hello and welcome to my March and April reading wrap-up. We're going to talk about a lot of audiobooks in this video because most of the books that I have read physically over the last 2 months either have already been featured or will be featured in upcoming reading vlogs. So, welcome to my audiobook reading wrap-up. A couple of things before we get started. I recently hit 500 subscribers, and for any of you who are watching this that are subscribed to my channel, thank you so much. I just can't fathom 500 people wanting to listen to me ramble about books, and so the fact that you are subscribed means a lot to me. It's just, I feel special and thank you so much. Second thing, I'm changing my posting schedule for the month of May. I will be posting every single Friday starting today. So enjoy. I hope you like it. Next week, I'm going to be talking about Bridgerton. So if you like Bridgerton, stay tuned. Okay, those are all the announcements. Let's get into the books that I've read over the last couple of months. Let's talk about Mistborn. I read the second and third book in the first Mistborn trilogy. This series takes place in this dystopian, post-apocalyptic fantasy world. You have this magic system that revolves around metals. Most people can only use one metal, therefore they only have one of these 10 powers. Our main character, Vin, is Mistborn, which means she can use all 10 metals, therefore she has 10 different powers. She is recruited by a crew of thieves who set out to perform this heist to take down the Empire and kill the evil dictator who rules over the Empire. That's what happens in the first book. The second book is the aftermath of all of that. So Vin, our main character, our Mistborn character from the first book, she is helping her romantic interest, Ellen, who's obsessed with politics and government and all that. She's helping him to rebuild a new nation, a better, democratic, free nation after the fall of the bad empire, right? So that's what's happening in book 2, The Well of Ascension. Something I like about this whole series is that there's a little epigraph at the beginning of each chapter that gives you just a little snippet into a similar parallel story that happened 1,000 years ago. It built up this mystery aspect of what really is happening here. Something else that I like specifically about Well of Ascension is the relationship that forms between Vin and her Kandra. In this world, Kandra are a shape-shifting creature, and so Vin has this Kandra who takes the shape of a wolfhound. I liked that. Just imagining this giant Irish wolfhound following Vin around. I love that kind of dog, so that was just a detail that I really liked. But more than that, I really like seeing the relationship that forms between these two characters and how they're able to help open each other's minds and have a different perspective on the world. I just love watching relationships like that grow in stories and seeing how people can change each other. Another thing I really liked about this story is there's a new character that's introduced in this book named Zane, and he is also a Mistborn, just like Vin is, and he grew up in a very similar situation to Vin. He is what's the word I'm looking for? Foil? A foil for Vin. And yeah, so I think that's just a very interesting contrast between those two characters. The ending of this book is insane. What a cliffhanger. What, and unfortunately, I have to spoil the book in order to talk about the next book in the series. So if you don't want to hear spoilers for The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, skip to this timestamp, okay? Cool. Let's talk about the third book, Hero of Ages. At the end of the previous book, Vin goes to the Well of Ascension. She opens it up, and it turns out that there was this evil force trapped in the Well of Ascension, and so now that she opened it up, this force is going to wreak havoc on the world until the world literally ends. In the Hero of Ages, Vin and Ellen and their friends are just trying to hold everything together, trying to keep things from falling apart. This book, there's so much going on. We're focused on lots of different characters in different parts of the Empire. One of the characters that we focus a lot on is Spook. I really liked getting to know Spook a little bit better and seeing his arc over the course of the trilogy, going from being a really awkward kid following his uncle and these other thieves around and looking up to them to now being the leader of a rebellion. Another character that we see more of in this story is Tensoon the Kandra. He now has to go back to his people. We get a glimpse into the Kandra community, how they govern themselves, and that is really interesting to me, and I am so impressed with just the level of detail in this world that Brandon Sanderson thought up. It's just super interesting to me. I really liked it. I liked this book best out of the trilogy just because we see everything come together, and that was just really impressive to me. Wow. The next book I read or listened to, not that it really matters, is Inkheart. This is about a 12-year-old girl and her father, Mo. Mo has the power to read things out of books. So if he's reading a book aloud, characters, things from the book will literally come to life. He is kidnapped by a character that he has previously read out of a book, and this character is the villain of their story. Maggie has to work with some other characters that came out of that same story to find her father, to rescue him from this villain. It is magical, and it really is all about like the magic of stories and reading. And if you love books, if you love reading, you will love reading this book, because it honestly, it is a love story to books and reading. I highly recommend it. I had a lot of fun listening to it, and I think you will too. Next, I read Aragon, and this book I've heard so much about growing up. I had friends who read it and loved it. My brother read it and loved it. Every time I went to the library as a kid, I feel like it had like a big display. It was about time I read it, especially after reading Fourth Wing. I wanted some more dragon fantasy flavor. This young man grows up on a little farm on the outskirts of a little town, very humble beginnings, and one day finds a dragon egg in the forest. He takes care of it until it hatches. He develops this bond with this dragon, all the while not knowing that this dragon egg was stolen from the king, who was a bad guy. He's a bad guy. While Aragon is off with his dragon, the king's henchmen find out where the dragon egg last was, and they kill Aragon's family. And so Aragon and his dragon Saphira go on this adventure to get revenge, to learn more about this ancient race of dragon riders, this noble race of dragon riders, and how Aragon is the first of this new generation of dragon riders. And so that's what this story is about. They go on this big epic fantasy journey. Because I chose to read Aragon for the dragon aspect after reading Fourth Wing, I was comparing the two, not to see which is better, just how they both approach like telling a fantasy story about dragons. On one hand, you have Fourth Wing, which is like a very contemporary fantasy, almost feels like young adult. A large portion of the book has to do with the romance of it. It is very intense, very fast paced. And then on the other hand, you have Aragon, which is also about a dragon, but it is very like classic epic fantasy vibes, where you have this boy from humble beginnings, but then is chosen and then has to go on this epic adventure. They're just two different vibes. There's just not a lot of world building in Fourth Wing. Whereas like in Aragon, while going on this journey, is learning about this big wide world that he lives in and all of the magic there is in this world. We're learning about it with him. So the world just feels a lot more detailed and complex. But also, because we're going on this really long journey, we have these really big intense moments, but then after each intense moment there's time to kind of slow down again. Whereas like in Fourth Wing, I feel like it's intense all the time. So if you really like something fast-paced, something that's gonna like be intense and fast-paced, Fourth Wing is the way to go. I really enjoyed Aragon, and I'm looking forward to reading the following books in the series. Let's get on to the next couple of books, which are Peter and the Starcatchers and Peter and the Shadow Thieves. These are both books within the Peter and the Starcatchers series, which is an origin story for Peter Pan. The first book takes place mostly at sea, and we're introduced in the first book to this magical substance called star stuff, which is basically pixie dust. It's the stuff that makes Peter fly. We're introduced to this stuff. We're also introduced to two different groups of people. The Starcatchers, who are trying to protect this stuff and send it back where it came from before the bad guys, known as the Others, get to it and use it for evil world domination purposes. So we have these two groups who are kind of fighting over it, who are trying to get this big trunk of star stuff. Captain Hook, before he becomes Captain Hook and his hand gets chopped off, he finds out that there's some ship that has this like really valuable treasure, and so he's after the star stuff without knowing that it's star stuff. And so we have these three different groups of people fighting over the star stuff, and that's what happens in book one. The Others, they lost the star stuff in book one to the Starcatchers, but they're not giving up. They come back in full force in book two with some help from this evil being that can steal people's shadows and like control their minds. Peter has to fly from Neverland back to England to where the Starcatchers are protecting and storing the star stuff and warn them that the Others are coming. And so this book takes place mostly in Victorian London as Peter is trying to find Molly and the other star catchers and warn them. I like them both. And if you like Peter Pan, I would highly recommend both both of these books. So yeah, those are all of the audiobooks. I'm going to rapid fire tell you all of the other books that I have physically read over the last 2 months. If there is a video in which I read these books, I will link that video so you can get more details about these books, okay? The Girl Who Drank the Moon and The Heart of the Sun Warrior. You can hear about those 2 books in this video. Then I read A Psalm for the Wild Built, Lonely Castle in the Mirror, A Prayer for the Crown Shy, and The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. These 4 books I read for this reading vlog right here, where I read Allison Page's favorite books. And then the last book I physically read is Bridgerton, book 4, Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which you will see in my next video. That'll be out next Friday. Those are all the books that I have read over the last 2 months. I would love to know what your favorite book is that you have read over the last month or 2. Please comment that down below. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books. I will see you in my next video, all about Bridgerton. Bye.